Sinnoh, Hisui, the land of the frozen north in the Pokemon world. The 4th generation released in the Pokemon franchise. Myself, like many others, have fond memories of these games, and in hindsight, it seemed like the spiritual end to the golden age of the franchise, because we all know where everything went after the soft reboot of Generation 5. For many, this was it, their pinnacle of Pokemondom. I myself turned 19 the year these games came out, which in some way, this was the last real hurrah of my childhood years, so to speak. But now we're in the year 2021, and the much anticipated Diamond and Pearl remakes are on the horizon. So, I thought to celebrate the release of these new additions to the Pokemon's family, I would rewrite the Diamond and Pearl anime. But not just any rewrite, a rewrite to turn Ash into the actual champion he had been working up to for so long. First, some rules. This Ash shares the same history as the Ash from the main timeline, meaning everything and every event, such as losing at the Indigo Plateau, winning the Orange Islands, top 8ing both the Silver and the Evergrande Conference, as well as his win at the Battle Frontier. These all happened. With that being said, let's get into the rewrite of the 4th gen of the Pokemon anime. I hope you enjoy. Alright, we immediately start off the first episode of the 4th gen following a Maiden's Voyage. We immediately see the feeling of this generation is going to be different. We start off the first episode with Dawn, a supporting character that, unlike the previous generations, actually plays an important role in the Diamond and Pearl series. Unlike May of Gen 3, she instantly knows what she wants to do with her Pokemon career, in following in the footsteps of her mom, who is a world-famous coordinator. After some brief daydreaming, Dawn takes off on her bike, heading to Sandgem Town and Professor Rowan's lab. Dawn spends some time riding around getting lost. Then, she eventually bumps into a stoic figure who she comes to learn is in fact the famous Professor Rowan. The two head to Rowan's lab, and we are confronted with a scene of chaos, as the Firestarter Chimchar has chosen to be a dick and steal Piplup's food. This causes a fight in which the two starters end up running out of the lab into the forest behind it, causing the Staraptor evolution line to escape as well. This prompts Dawn to take off after the starters to get her first Pokemon. I also can't forget to mention that the only starter that has any level of chill here is Turtwig. I mean, just look at it. All he cares about is food. Anyway, back with Dawn, she eventually comes across the missing starters fighting, when she is then attacked by Piplup. The two starters then take off deeper into the woods as Dawn gives chase. She eventually comes to a spider's web with Piplup trapped inside, about to be devoured by an Ariados. This forces Piplup and Dawn to team up to ward off the creepy predator. Then, they are met by even more of the Spidermon, and after Dawn tries to sacrifice herself to protect Piplup, the little water bird finds the strength to protect her and chase off all of the Ariados, followed by a chance encounter with a mysterious force at Lake Verity. Dawn then makes her way back to Rowan's lab, where she officially chooses Piplup as her starter Pokemon. She then sets out on her journey to become the world's top coordinator. This episode ends with us finally seeing Ash arrive in the Sinnoh region with Pikachu and Aipom, followed by Team Rocket stealing Pikachu and separating it from Ash in the closeout of the episode. The next episode we're going to cover is the second one in the series, 2 Degrees of Separation. This episode picks up with Dawn, who is trying to catch her first Pokemon, and after failing gracefully, she encounters Pikachu. It is hurt after Team Rocket separated it from Ash. After forwarding another attempt for Team Rocket to try and capture Pikachu, Dawn realizes that it belongs to another trainer, and she rushes it to a Pokemon Center. Dawn then calls Professor Owen to tell him about what happened. Meanwhile, Ash and Aipom are searching as far as they can for Pikachu, with no luck, until they get to Professor Owen's lab, and he tells her that Dawn actually found Pikachu. While this is happening, Team Rocket actually decides to crash at James's rich summer Sinnoh pad, where he is reunited with his long-lost Carnivine. Over with Ash, he heads out to find Dawn when he is met with one of his oldest friends, Brock, the former gym leader of Pewter City. He came out to Sinnoh after he spent time with his family to travel with Ash once again. After being rejected by another woman and demonstrating the strength of his dominant hand, Ash tells Brock about what happened with Pikachu as they continue to search for Dawn. It's at this point that Aipom then gets in a fight with a Starly, and Ash immediately identifies the regional bird as his first catch of the Sinnoh region. After a bit of a struggle, Ash finally manages to catch the tiny bird Pokemon, and the episode ends with Ash and Brock running off towards Dawn and vice versa, while a new rival looks on, criticizing Ash's newest catch. And finally, the last of the drawn-out opening episodes, when Pokemon worlds collide. This episode is a very important one, because this is where we meet Paul, who some in the Pokemon community say is Ash's greatest rival, and it is immediately clear that Paul is a far different trainer than Ash. When Ash can't participate in a 3-on-3 battle, Paul tells Ash he's a waste of his time and he walks off, leaving Ash and Brock to find Dawn and Pikachu. Then, Ash and Brock notice something that looks like a Volt Tackle, and they go in to investigate, to which they find Team Rocket still chasing down Pikachu. After sending them blasting off and getting to meet Dawn, Ash thanks thanks her for saving Pikachu. The new trio then head back to Rowan's lab to pick up a package that was sent there for Ash. After getting decked out in his new threads, Ash is officially ready to start his adventures in the Sinnoh region. And oh boy, we won't have to wait long, as Paul has followed him to challenge him and his Pikachu that knows Volt Tackle. This battle is important, but doesn't need to be a long drawn out explanation. Ash's Starly loses to Paul's Starly, and he claims that it was right when he told Ash that it was weak, and Ash is also a weak trainer. Then, Aipom beats Paul's Chimchar to even up the battle. This is an important thing, as it shows Paul's real character when he calls Chimchar useless for losing. Then, the final battle, Elekid versus Pikachu. This battle gets really intense, but it ends up in a tie when Pikachu is able to use a double Iron Tail to break Elekid and both Pokemon faint. This is a lesson that Paul won't soon forget. Paul then releases Starly, claiming that it's too weak for him. He then walks off. This whole engagement gets under Ash's skin. The way Paul treats his Pokemon, his attitude, and it's here that the episode ends. Now, why did I basically retell the first 3 episodes in such great detail? Well, this is the moment that Ash has his pivotal change. He can tell that Paul is not like any other trainer he's faced. He's calculating and cold. Someone who believes that strength above anything else will carry you. And more importantly, he is actually a rival. Someone to push Ash. Don't get me wrong, I love the first 3 seasons of the anime, but there's one thing they were seriously lacking. It's competition for Ash during his journey. His rival for the region didn't really show up until the actual league, which, in my opinion, is far too late, as the work for the league had already been done, so Ash didn't have anyone there as a measuring stick for himself until it was too late. And I know what you're gonna say. Well, Ronan, Ash had Gary for the first 2 generations of the anime, and while that is true, Gary didn't really push Ash in the anime. Their first official battle didn't actually happen until they were about to start Gen 2, and even in that gen, there were times when Gary could have battled Ash before the Silver Conference, but he refused. So in my mind, Gary was never truly a rival, not in the true sense anyway. And in here lies the change for Ash. Now he has a clear and defined rival within the first 3 episodes of the anime. Ash knows all of his past endeavors have led him to this point, a trainer who is a true challenge, and this one thought will be the driving force for Ash to get stronger, because little does he know, other far greater challenges await him in Sinnoh. Anyway, enough with my rambling, on to the next episode, titled Getting Twiggy with It. Now, before we go on, I want to state something. From this point on, anything involving Dawn and Brock that happened in the actual anime will actually happen. The only difference is Ash in his choice to push harder as a trainer. Not like Paul, but to be more focused. With that being said, in this episode, Ash catches a Turtwig in the normal timeline. But I'm sorry to say, it won't be happening here. Now that I've triggered half my subscriber base, and you're about to unsubscribe, let me explain my reasoning. You see, very early on, it was painted as Turtwig and Chimchar would have the same rivalry as Ash and Paul. But... spoilers. We all know how that turned out, and unfortunately as a result, Turtwig ended up just taking a backseat as it evolved and the show got closer to the end. And there is also the fact that Turtwig and its evolution line was part of a glaring problem with Ash's team in Sinnoh that I'll go into much later. Moving on. In the next episode, Different Strokes for Different Blokes, we see Ash take on Paul once again. You see, this is what I'm talking about. 2 more episodes later, and these 2 have already battled twice. Anyway, normally Ash would use Turtwig here, but since Ash didn't catch the grass type, we'll replace it with Aipom. The results will still be the same though, with Chimchar winning, showing Ash just how far Paul has come in such a short amount of time, forcing Ash to increase his training with all of his new Pokemon. Now, another side note, I feel that after spending a whole gen with May and Hoenn, Ash would be more inclined to practice with Dawn and help her develop, which in turn, she would become a lot stronger in this version. Plus, it would also make something way more apparent for earlier in this version than in the original. Spoilers. So during this time, I feel that both her and Ash would enter the Jubilife contest. While they both wouldn't do as good, like in the canon, it would serve to help Ash in his battle techniques and timing with the attacks, as a contest is a great way to cultivate those skills. With that out of the way, we move on to the next episode, A Staravia is Born. In this episode, we end up seeing Ash teaching Starly Aerial Ace, and it gets injured in the process. But by the end of the episode, it evolves into Staravia and finally masters. Now we enter a 2-parter, with shapes of things to come and a gruff act to follow. In this episode, Ash finally arrives in Oreburgh City, where he challenges for his first gym badge. At the gym, he encounters Paul, challenging for his badge as well. Unfortunately, Ash will have to wait until Paul has his battle, but this gives Ash a chance to watch the gym leader Rorik battle. It is at this point, Ash learns that the gym is a rock-type gym, and he uses 3-on-3 in battles, which is a problem. He only has 3 Pokemon, one of them being Staravia, a flying type, who is weak to rock types. This starts to worry Ash, as he looks on to Paul and Rorik's battle, which plays out exactly like the anime. Azumarill loses to Geodude, and Paul calls it a good for nothing, which gets to Ash, but Elekid takes out Geodude on the crackback with a single brick break. Next, Roark uses Onix and Paul goes with Elekid at first, and the battle gets tough, as Roark calls for a stealth rock, but Onix gets paralyzed by Elekid's static, and then Paul recalls Elekid to send in Chimchar, who immediately gets hit by the stealth rocks. Then, Chimchar uses Dig to take down Onix. Roark then sends in Cranidos. This proves to be too much for Chimchar, even though his Blaze ability ends up activating and it loses out to a headbutt. Then, Elekid comes back out to wrap up the battle and earn Paul the Coal Badge. Next comes Ash's battle, which Paul stays to watch, and I must say, it goes far worse than what it did in the canon. With Ash not having Turtwig, that means that he has to use Staravia. Needless to say, it's no contest. Ash doesn't even make it past Onix. This doesn't bode well for Ash. Paul tells him that he's pathetic. Then he leaves. This sends Ash into overdrive with training. He spends the next week or so at the Oreburgh mine. This training starts bearing fruits from the very beginning. Since Paul taught Chimchar Dig to counter Roark, Ash decides to use the same line of thought and turn Staravia's wing attack into the much more powerful Steel Wing, giving the flying bird Pokemon a move to fight back against the rock types of the Oreburgh gym. This leads us into the next episode, Wild in the Streets. We see Ash continue his training at the Oreburgh mine, and Staravia has mastered its new technique, Steel Wing. Ash has also been working with Pikachu and its Iron Tail, as well as Aipom and its Focus Punch. They have been practicing their moves on the huge rocks at the mine when Pikachu's Iron Tail smashes a rock and a strange looking piece comes out of it. Ash picks it up, he knows instantly what it is, when he is interrupted by Roark. Ash shows him the rock, which Roark then confirms to Ash that it is indeed a fossil. Ash tries to give it to Roark, but the gym leader tells him to keep it. The museum has a fossil regenerator, and Ash can get it restored there. This excites Ash, as he's never had a fossil Pokemon before. But before they can go any further, they are interrupted by news that other fossil Pokemon have gotten loose and they are attacking everyone, thanks to Team Rocket. They then square off with an Aerodactyl, and Dawn unveils her new coordination moves with Piplup and Baniri. Roark's Cranidos then evolves into a Rampardos. This gives Ash another level of things to overcome in his next gym battle with Roark. Once everything is settled down, Ash shows everyone the fossil, but he has to wait a day for the regenerator to be reinstalled at the museum. So he and Dawn spend the night practicing the moves that she perfected. Now, here is the next change. Normally, Ash would challenge Roark the next day, but since he has a fossil to revive, he in fact waits another week before he re-challenges, as his new fossil Pokemon has the ability to change the tides of this battle. After a week passes, Ash returns to the gym, telling Roark he's ready to finish what he started. This leads us into our next episode, or Rampardos we watched. Ash gets his battle. First up is Pikachu against Onix, and the battle goes much different with Pikachu being able to take Onix down with an Iron Tail after using Dawn's spinning strategy. Ash then recalls Pikachu and sends in Aipom to face Roark's Geodude. Aipom is able to use its increased timing with its Focus Punch and Dawn's spinning technique to dodge and put Geodude down, bringing Roark to his final Pokemon, and he doesn't hesitate to send it in, Rampardos. Ash chooses to leave an Aipom, but it doesn't last long, as it is quickly taken out. Ash then sends back in Pikachu. This battle goes a bit longer, with the Electric Mouse getting in some good hits with Iron Tail, but ultimately it falls as well. This brings Ash to his last Pokemon. He knows he has to make a choice here. Go with Staravia, who knows Steel Wing, but has a type disadvantage, or go with his new Pokemon, who not even Dawn or Brock know what it is. After some thought and some pressure from Roark, the choice of his final Pokemon is made, and Ash chooses to send in his newest team member, Shieldon. Now hear me out on this choice. It checks a couple of things off of the types Ash needs box, being a Steel and Rock type. It also covers a much needed purpose that Turtwig would have eventually covered when it evolved into Torterra, being a much needed bulk and defensive wall for Ash's team. So, back to the battle. With this mon in play, Ash is able to counter Rampardos' headbutt based moves, as it is literally a shield, but Roark does have a counter for this partial steel type in Flamethrower that does cause great damage. Ash does manage to counter some of them with ancient power, but Rampardos is much faster and pushes the little fossil shield to its limit when a Flamethrower lands point blank. Out of an act of desperation, Ash calls for one last move that hits Rampardos much harder than Flamethrower, Metal Burst. This move returned the damage Shieldon took from Flamethrower double to Rampardos, and because it was a steel type move, it was super effective, giving Ash the win and his first Sinnoh Gym badge, the Coal Badge. But this battle has a very unexpected result. It appears that Shieldon was much higher level than Ash thought, and as a result, it evolves into Bastiodon. Ash is amazed by this. Roark comments that this Pokemon is a very tough species, as he knows from personal experience. foreshadowing, and he tells Ash that Bastiodon is a very hard Pokemon to gain the trust of, but once he has it, this defensive Mon will never let him down. Now, I know what you're thinking, how could this Mon evolve so soon? In the games, the fossils are restored at level 20. So Ronan, you're expecting me to believe that this Pokemon grew 10 levels in 1 week. And I say no. I'm saying that in the anime, fossils can be restored at any level. Just look at the Aerodactyl. It knew Giga Impact right when it was restored, a move that Aerodactyl can't learn until level 73 in the games. So I think it's reasonably possible for Ash to find the same kind of fossil that is just ready to evolve. So moving on. After this, bunch of filler episodes where nothing really important happens. They do meet Pokemon Hunter Jade, who not only wants Pikachu, but Ash's Bastiodon. After they defeat her, Bastiodon warms up to Ash, as it finally sees Ash really cares for it, when he refused to let Pokemon Hunter Jade take it. Then, in settling a not-so-old score, Ash and Dawn enter another contest. Ash doesn't do well, but Dawn ends up winning the whole event, earning her first ribbon to enter the Grand Festival. Right after this, Dawn catches up Weasel, which is important for later events. It becomes clear very quickly that Weasel isn't into the whole contest scene, as it prefers to battle. And to top it off, Weasel just doesn't want to listen to Dawn, even going as far as to pick fights with anything that it thinks is strong. The next major episode is an elite meet and greet. This episode is important for one major reason. Lucian of the Elite Four shows up, and the challenge of the Elite Four is clearly defined. Any trainer who wishes to challenge the Champion League has to win in the Sinnoh League first. If someone can accomplish this, then they can challenge the Elite Four. Ash asks for a battle with Lucian, but is turned down when he tells Ash that the only way for him to battle is if for him to win the Sinnoh League. But as for Dawn, Weasel wants to battle, so Lucian takes it up on the offer, which it immediately regrets when it gets taken out by Lucian's Bronzong. Ash, seeing how strong Lucian is, now has a level of motivation added to him that he's never seen before. This is going to prompt the next change in our story. Ash tells Dawn that he notices something. He sees that his Aipom is happiest when it's in contests, after the last contest that they entered, and her Weasel is happiest when battling. So he offers her a trade. He thinks that it would be best for the Pokemon. He also mentions that he caught Aipom outside of a contest hall, so it only seems natural. Brock then seconds this, as it seems Weasel just can't find its stride with Dawn. Dawn then seeks the advice of Lucian, and his response to her is a simple one. Your job as a trainer is to do what's best for your Pokemon, even if that means that it's not with you. Dawn is saddened by this, as she really wanted to work with Weasel, so she asks it if it would prefer to have a life of battling and training with Ash, or a life of contests with her. This gets Weasel's attention, as it was kind of feeling down after its loss against Lucian as Bronzong. Dawn can see it in Weasel's eyes, so she makes the hard choice, but she agrees to trade with Ash. Now, Ash has Weasel much earlier in this timeline, giving him more time to work with it. Ultimately, the change proves to be the best for everyone, as Weasel gets out of its funk and syncs immediately with Ash. Aipom is also happy, as it gets to play dress up like it always dreamed. After this is more filler, all the way until the team hits Eterna City, in the episode A Sphere of Influence. In this episode, Ash meets Gardenia at the Eterna Museum and a new rival in Nando. This grass bug type trainer will be a rival for both Ash and Dawn. The trio also learn the legendary story of Sinnoh and the creation of the Pokemon world, with a model of an odd foreshadowing building in a glass case behind them. Anyway, after they stop Team Rocket, Ash earns the right to challenge Gardenia in the very next episode, the Grass Menagerie. Now, this is a huge change from the original. Ash's team has changed massively compared to the canon, as he does not have Turtwig or Aipom here. So, he opts to start the battle with Staravia against Gardenia's Cherubi. This battle goes very quickly, as Staravia is at a much higher level here and is much faster than in the original due to the contest battles. Cherubi ends up losing to a well-timed aerial ace. Next out comes Gardenia's Turtwig, which is able to unfortunately make quick work of Staravia with Leech Seed. Ash then chooses to send in Pikachu. This battle proves to be a tough one, as Pikachu is at a huge disadvantage against the grass type. In the end, Turtwig proves that it has the endurance to outlast Pikachu, and the mouse falls after getting caught in another Leech Seed. This leaves Ash with only one choice, as he's not going to use Weasel due to the massive disadvantage. So Ash sends in Bastiodon. The battle gets one-sided very quickly, but Turtwig, before it gets knocked out, is able to land a Leech Seed, putting Ash on a clock. Gardenia then sends in her final Pokemon, Roserade. This battle proves to be more challenging for Ash, as the harsh sunlight set up by Cherubi turns Roserade's Weather Ball into a Fire-type move, causing a burn on Bastiodon. But it and Ash are too stubborn to give in, and Ash implores it to use the move Ancient Power, which does connect with Roserade. It also increases Bastiodon's base stats in the process, allowing it to move slightly faster. The battle is drawing to a close. Ash has to finish it. He needs Roserade to get in close, as the move he has in mind won't work well with the sunlight out as bright as it is now. Ash then orders an Iron Head from the massive Pokemon, which Roserade easily dodges. This repeats for a while, until Bastiodon is breathing heavily. Gardenia can see that Bastiodon is on its last leg, and orders Roserade to use another Weather Ball, but the sunlight isn't as bright, so the attack attack loses power, and Ash calls for his move, Ice Beam, and Roserade has nowhere to run, as all the smashing Bastiodon actually did was knocking down the trees and closing the battle area. Now, Roserade has nowhere to go except to push through the attack. It comes down to their sheer will, but Bastiodon is way too stubborn to lose to a grass type, and it forces the Ice Beam through the Weather Ball, hitting Roserade, knocking it out, and earning Ash the Forest Badge. Now, you may be wondering, how did Ash teach Bastiodon Ice Beam? Well, remember Don's Baneri? Ash wants to take a page from Paul's book and teaches Mon's moves to cover their type disadvantages. So he taught Bastiodon Ice Beam, and this move covers one of its major weaknesses, the ground typing. On to the next episode in top-down training. It is at this point that Cynthia, the champion of all of Sinnoh, is introduced, and we also have our next encounter for Paul as well. He approaches Cynthia and challenges her to a full 6-on-6 battle, in which he loses pretty quickly to Cynthia's Garchomp. Later on, while getting his Pokemon treated at the Pokemon Center, Paul and Ash really start to butt heads on their personal philosophies. This is a pivotal point for Ash, as this is when he knows without a shadow of doubt that he must beat Paul out of sheer principle to prove that you must treat your Pokemon with respect. Ash also learns that the Pokemon that Paul used were caught from other regions, the same ones that he's journeyed to in the past, which gets him thinking about potentially swapping out his Pokemon with older Pokemon. But that's a thought for a later time. So after this, the trio moves on from Eterna City. There is some filler that happens here between the end of the season. The only real notable thing that happens here is the Pokemon Hunter Jade shows up again, but she is easily dealt with. But I'm going to add one major change here before we get into the last major episodes that we have to cover. It is at this point that Ash encounters and catches Gible, and here is my reasoning why. In the original canon, Ash didn't catch it until right before the 8th gym. This was clearly not enough time for Ash to help it master Draco Meteor and obtain any type of evolution. So this brings Ash's team to 5 members. We now head into the final 3 episodes of this season. They are Tag, Wurrit, Blaze Glory, and It Smells Like Team Spirit. The heroes end up in Hearthome City, and since Ash can't challenge the gym leader right now due to it being away, the group decides to enter the Hearthome Tag Battle. This will allow them to get some much needed training in. But Mr. Sunshine, Paul, is also here as well. The team all gets split up into different teams of 2. Dawn ends up with a very strategic trainer, Conway, and Brock ends up with a trainer named Holly, who immediately rejects him. Back to the hand, I guess. Then there's Ash. He gets paired with his soulmate, Paul. The battles are all held over a 3-day period, and at the end, things will never be the same. For the first battle, nothing really changes. Ash sticks with Pikachu and Paul goes with Chimchar. The whole purpose is so Paul can power up Chimchar by having it battle another fire type. But when Chimchar faces down a Surf that will cause a great injury at the command of Paul, Ash orders Pikachu to intercept to protect Chimchar. This doesn't sit well with Paul. Even though the two manage to win, it's a bitter victory. Later that night, Ash is training with his Pokemon when he comes across Paul training with Chimchar. It is brutal, downright abuse towards the fire monkey. Ash tries to interfere and stop it, but Paul says it's something Chimchar wants, and surprisingly, the monkey agrees with Paul. But when the training goes too far and Chimchar gets injured to the point to where it can't stand and loses consciousness, Ash interferes and takes it to the Pokemon Center to get healed. It is at this point, when they all meet up with Brock, Paul explains the hidden power of Chimchar. The reason why Paul treats Chimchar the way he does is because it can only access its ability Blaze when under extreme duress. After it was attacked by a wild squad of Zangoose, Chimchar's true power became apparent from Paul. Ever since that day, Paul's done whatever he had to bring it out. It's at this point that Paul refuses to let Chimchar rest, even at the warning of Brock and the others. In the very next match, Paul uses it, even though it's nowhere near healed. But this battle will also change for Ash. As in the canon, he had Turtwig, but as he no longer has it in this version, Ash will use Gible. Ash orders Gible to protect Chimchar in the battle, and their opponents are a Metagross and a Zangoose. The battle is a painful one. Chimchar ends up freezing in the battle out of fear of the Zangoose. This leaves Ash to pick up the slack when Paul stops giving it commands. Luckily, Gible is able to protect Chimchar. It is at this point that Ash takes over and starts giving Chimchar commands, as Paul has completely given up on it. Ash is able to get the victory with no thanks to Paul, moving them both on to the final day. After the battles of the day are over, Paul is outside of the stadium. He lets Chimchar out of the ball and tells it to get lost. He wants nothing to do with it. Chimchar tries to change his mind, but Paul, in front of Ash, refuses. Ash, out of frustration for Paul or guilt for Chimchar, asks the fire monkey to join his team. This triggers Paul, even though he won't admit it. After some thought, Chimchar accepts the offer and becomes Ash's Pokemon, bringing his Sinnoh team to 6. Paul tells Ash and Chimchar that they are pathetic, and then he walks away, while Ash tells Chimchar to ignore him, as they'll show Paul just how wrong he can be. The very next day, Ash and Paul Paul have to team up again. In this battle, Paul goes with Torterra, and in the original, Ash chose Staravia, but I'm going to change it up here, as Ash will use Bastiodon. This is purely a demonstration of power on Ash's part, as he wants Paul to see that he has something that can match his strongest Pokemon. And it works, as Paul tries to use Hyper Beam right off the bat, without the safety of the others in consideration. Ash cancels it out with Ancient Power. This does, however, have a negative side effect. Bastiodon and Torterra start fighting each other. This almost costs Paul and Ash the match, but the attacks of the two Titan Pokemon end up catching Brock and Holly's Pokemon in the crossfire, knocking them both out. Torterra tries to attack Bastiodon one last time with Leaf Storm, and Paul does nothing to stop it. But Ash does, and he orders an Ice Beam that not only knocks back the Leaf Storm in the process, but also freezes Torterra. Now that things have calmed, the two trainers may have won this battle, but they still have one more to go, and the tension between the two is running high. Now we come to the final battle. Ash goes with Chimchar, and Paul chooses Elekid. The battle is pretty much the same as in the original, with Elekid evolving, but with one key difference. After the battle is over, at the order of Paul, and to get back with Ash, it tells Electabuzz to attack Chimchar with a Thunder at full power. There's not enough time, and Chimchar gets caught in the path of the move. Ash calls to it, but Chimchar is unresponsive as it is flooded with electrical energy. And that will cover the first season of the Diamond and Pearl anime. 53 episodes in total. What did you guys think? Did we do it justice? Is Ash on the right track to claim the Sinnoh crown? And how do you feel about the changes to his team? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to interact more with me, don't forget to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter. And if you want to support me any further, head over to my Patreon. Just $5 a month gets you 1 week early access to all of my videos. These awesome people have already donated, so I can continue to bring you the content that you love. The links for all of these are in the description below. Anyway, I'm Ronan Charizard, and I'll see you in the next video.